Hello everyone, Books with Banks back again with another video, a book review for you all today, and this is actually part 2 in my reread of Ian C. Esslemont's Path to Ascendancy series. I'll be reviewing his book, Dancer's Lament, today. This book right here. And I chose to return to this story by listening to the audiobook narrated by John Banks. Before getting too far into the review, though, if you could please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, that would really mean a lot. Anyway, moving on. Dancer's Lament by Ian C. Esslemont was published by Tor Books in the U.S. in 2016. This is the first of 3, soon-to-be 4 novels that Esslemont has written in his Path to Ascendancy series, which is a prequel series to the main events and time period covered in Esslemont's Novels of the Malazan Empire series, as well as his friend and co-world designer Steven Erikson's Malazan Book of the Fallen series. But these Path to Ascendancy books, these tell the story of how 2 eventually powerful and ominous figures of those later books and later series, telling the story of how these 2 characters met one another and the violent state and setting of the Kwanteli continent in the rough century or so before those other series take place. Also, these tell the story kind of the several decades leading up to and through the early kind of foundational era of the Malazan Empire itself that so many of the other books, especially the later books, deal with. So it all begins here when the city of Liheng is under siege from the Itko Khanis, another region, another people on the Kwanteli continent. While the city Liheng is under siege, a young assassin named Doran Rav finds himself chasing a young mage named Wu into the besieged city, and Doran is trying to settle a score with this mage. And then the story just grows from there. I first read Dancer's Lament in the summer of 2019. Returning to the story, I find myself picking up on details that I had missed before, most notably details all around the character development strategy that Esslemont has employed here to try and flesh out specifically the main character and the origin story of Doran Rav, and who many of us Malazan fans can recognize Doran Rav is going to later become. I'll return to this point in a little bit, but for now, let's just break down the story a little more to give anyone that might be considering reading these, give you a little more of an idea of what this book is all about. So we really just have 3 main characters here. Doran, who is simultaneously working his way into the underworld of crime and thieving guilds in the city of Liheng, but also, while he's doing that, he's searching for this elusive mage, a young man named Wu. Then we have Silk, and Silk is a mage of the city, a very powerful mage, and he and the other mages in his kind of cohort, they basically do the bidding of the city's ruler and protectress, Lady Shalmanat. But this cabal of mages that Silk finds himself in, this group, they also have a lot of authority and power over like the governance of the city, over how the city's like defense strategy is while they're being besieged, over their attack strategy when they attack the forces outside the city. And over the course of this first book here, Silk comes to learn more about his particular relationship to magic, but also about the mysteries of the rest of his magical cohort, and the mysteries of the protectress herself. So that's the kind of the second storyline we have going on, the second main character. Then, third, last but not least, we have Iko, and Iko works for the king. She's in a specific kind of military unit, a bodyguard type unit for the king of the Itko Khanis. Again, that's the group that's besieging the city. Iko, this character, she goes through maybe a bit of a crisis over the course of this story. She's not, or she loses a bit of confidence in her just no questions asked kind of loyalty in fighting for her king, and she's trying to decide for herself where to draw the line between that loyalty and between blindly following a warmongering madman and kind of trying to see what role she really wants to play in all of this violence. So I did cover a lot of those elements in my previous video on this book, the kind of the part one of this series, where I did a catch up halfway through of just my general thoughts. That video was just to give that really quick update while pointing out a few of newer things that I was noticing this time around. And then this being a more complete review, though, I still wanted to reiterate some of that basic information if you're, checking out this video, but maybe you missed my last one. So now for my more in-depth review of the various elements at play here in this story. First and foremost, let's talk about style and pacing. This novel is a bit shorter than what we might typically be used to as Malazan fans, but its brevity actually serves the pacing really well. The siege action, as well as jumping around between three main points of view, leaves little time for lengthier scene descriptions, or like setting descriptions, actual landscape descriptions. There's not too much of that. And there's also less time for like those deep thinking, page-long inner monologues, all about themes. The language is very concise and to the point, and even a brutal amputation scene later on in the book. That amputation scene, it's described in a very straightforward way, and sure, that will still make you cringe, but there's no real obsessing over the brutality of it. We don't linger on the scene for too long. So that's kind of just a few things I wanted to say about the style and pacing. Second, let's talk about the world itself. And this might be one of the most important elements, I'd say, if you're considering picking up this book, especially if you haven't read other Malazan works. So yeah, this is kind of, again, after going through this a second time, this is sort of what I feel like I should say that might be helpful in helping you make your decision or not, whether or not to pick this up. This might be where the book either excels for some or falls short for others. All throughout the book, the characters, and the mages in particular, will often make these allusions to the magic system at play. They'll make allusions to the lore of ancient peoples. There might be some kind of subtle language about schemes of certain gods going on. And as a Malazan fan myself, I was able to make sense of most of these hints and references to various world elements. But the really powerful characters themselves do have a tendency to speak in riddles about these sorts of things. So this might be a little bit of a difficult read for audiences that grow tired or frustrated with that sort of kind of riddle dialogue where no one's actually getting to the point and saying exactly what they mean. Again, especially with the mage characters, that can really tend to be the pattern of their, or the kind of style of dialogue that Esslemont's going for there. Magic does play a big part in this world and in this story too, so if you like your fantasy a little lighter on the magic, then sure, you might maybe have half of Doran's storyline that is pretty light on magic, and then most of Eco's storyline is also light on magic, so those might satisfy you, and just really, really light spoiler alert here, there are certain large-scale magical moments and events that play a big part in a lot of the climactic action of the book, and the action of the siege. So magic is very important for this world and for how this story plays out. So just go in maybe with the expectation that magic's going to be important and play a big role in things, but how that magic's happening, how certain characters are as powerful as they are, might not be fully explained to you, or might only be explained in slightly riddle-ish sort of dialogue. Moving on, for fans of the Malazan world, it is a joy to see the origin of two important characters and to see the other things that were happening in the world around them. And I'd say fear not, this is not the type of prequel where every scene is an Easter egg or some scene or moment that was alluded to or reference that's become this big myth. It's not like we're jumping around going through the best hits of these characters' origin stories. Sure, there's some of that here. There's some of those Easter eggs and little lore hints. but Esslemont has really crafted a unique setting full of original characters, all kind of orbiting around the main characters here. And so he's not just using this as like an extended wiki entry. Basically, it really is its own kind of unique original story, and it's very imaginative. It's not just based. The structure isn't just based on all of those things that we know from reading the other books. Esslemont brought a lot of new flavors and a lot of new exciting ideas to the world in this book. Next, let's kind of narrow in a little bit more on the characters. Doran, Rav, and Wu are a hilarious duo, and Esslemont, I think, has brilliantly paced out their interactions, building slowly from kind of random, infrequent meetings of annoyance and frustration and frustrated enmity. He builds those kind of more random instances towards much more frequent meetings in which the feelings are much more this kind of reluctant but trusting cooperation, this sort of really kind of slow burn alliance building. And Doran's character development in particular is turning him from basically an apathetic assassin into someone who might actually, by the end of this, care about fighting for one side or another, care about fighting for a cause maybe, or if not any of that, at least he'll care about fighting for friends and loved ones. He's also someone who cares about the mysteries of his new alliance, or the mysteries that his new alliance promises to unlock. So if that type of character growth, that type of character arc appeals to you, then please don't hesitate in picking up Dancer's Lament. There's a ton of that in this. Not to mention that Doran in particular is a trained assassin, so you do get some cool rooftop assassin fights as well. Then there are some emotional moments too. A siege is going on after all, and you see young children involved in bloody organized crime and thieving guild conflicts all throughout the book. So definitely prepare yourself for some of those more emotional beats. Doran makes some fun friends and one more emotional, heartfelt connection with a girl and her birds. And in that particular storyline, that particular connection and relationship is easily my favorite part of the whole book. As for other characters, Silk is a perfect, arrogant, self-important, kind of pretty boy mage who thinks his stuff doesn't stink. But over the course of the book, I say it's fair to say he flirts a little bit too closely with magical mysteries and the mysteries of his fellow mages of his cohort. And I think by the end of this book, we can definitely say that his self-confidence has been shaken. Yeah. And then Eco, I would say, represents the anti-war, anti-violence message of this story. A lot of the books set in the Malazan world, they do tend to stress the senseless, destructive nature of warfare, the kind of futile nature of it. And Eco's inner monologues and uncertain loyalties focus a lot on that theme to point out like, hey, why are people throwing so many lives away defending one king's desire to conquer one random city? Yeah, the theme is reflected also this theme is reflected also in a group like the Crimson Guard's attempt to help another great lord or king, some prince of somewhere, hunt down the terrifying man-beast Relandris, a man-beast who roams the plains and terrorizes and destroys caravans and whatnot. Just maybe a light spoiler, but that hunt might not go super well. Basically, this idea of the more and more you throw soldiers and people at kind of ridiculous conquest and ridiculous accomplishments, violent accomplishments, the less and less it's going to turn out well. And maybe last but not least, for Hood's sake, let's take a minute to talk about death. A mysterious young man who has started the cult of Hood, a cult all centered around Hood, the god of death. Now, this is an important character for later books, the person who starts this cult. So he's very important for later books, sure, but also I think he's just kind of a reminder, a steady reminder all throughout this book in particular, of how ultimately futile so many other characters' ambitions are, because in the end, everyone winds up dead. Or not, specifically plot-wise in this book, the fates of everyone isn't they all die, but everyone does die at the end of their life. So on that happy note, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down below if you've read Dancer's Lament and what you thought about it. I will be continuing on to Book 2, Dead House Landing, very, very soon, and I can't wait. Thanks again for watching. Have a good day. Bye.